Hello, welcome to another Lenten Daily Devotion with Pastor Andrew. That's me. Today is the 4th of April. We are on the cusp of Holy Week, starting with Palm Sunday, this coming Sunday, and we are in the midst of our week talking about oil or anointing. Oil, probably. So, our text today comes from Matthew 25, 1 through 13. Yes, it's the parable of the 10 young bridesmaids. Now, at that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 young bridesmaids who took their lamps and went out to meet the groom. Now, 5 of them were wise, and the other 5 were foolish. The foolish ones took their lamps, but did not bring oil for them. But the wise ones took their lamps and also brought containers of oil. When the groom was late in coming, they all became drowsy and went to sleep. But at midnight there was a cry, "Look, the groom! Come out to meet him." Then all those bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. But the foolish bridesmaids said to the wise ones, "Give us some of your oil, because our lamps have gone out." But the wise bridesmaids replied, "No, because if we share with you, there won't be enough for our lamps and yours. We have a better idea. You go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were gone to buy oil, and the groom came, those who were ready went with him into the wedding. Then the door was shut. Later the other bridesmaids came and said, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he replied, "I tell you the truth, I don't know you. Therefore keep alert, because you don't know the day or hour." I don't like it. Right off, I don't like it. But what is Jesus talking about here? Maybe we'll get an idea in our devotional. But yes, also another one of those, keep your lamps lit, right? You never know when either the groom is coming or the thief in the night, right? Or the master. There's so many of these parables talking about lamps and oil and keeping them lit, etc. So, what does our devotional writer have to say? Those focus verses, 2 through 4. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps, went to meet the bridegroom. 5 were foolish and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. Out of oil! What cannot be shared, borrowed, or even bought? In a culture so marked with consumerism, we hardly notice the constant sales pitch bombarding us. The constant sales pitches bombarding us. We struggle to imagine a commodity that cannot be exchanged or purchased. The story of the wise and foolish maidens, maidens, awaiting the bridegroom, antiquated as it feels, begs a very relevant question. What does God require of us that we must seek, keep, and maintain, not from others or from Amazon, but from the Spirit? I almost read that Sprint. See? Consumerism. What does the oil of this parable represent? Faith? The light of Christ? Interesting questions. Morality? As the hymn puts it, we keep our lamps trimmed and burning. But what in the world does that actually mean? Yes, keep your lamps trim and burning, right? What does that actually mean, though? The difference between the two groups, the wise versus the foolish, entails readiness, preparedness, anticipation of required supplies for when the bridegroom arrives. I like that, rhymes. Regardless of how long he is delayed. Right focus equals holy wisdom. Readiness to meet Christ begins with filtering out the many distractions that beckon us to look elsewhere for purpose, affirmation, security, and abundant life. All the bridesmaids went out to meet the bridegroom. All of them got drowsy when he was nowhere to be found, and all of them slept. At this point, all 10 are equally righteous and finite. The tipping point comes with the bridegroom's arrival. Only the wise half thought to bring extra oil. This seems to be the only instance in the Bible where keeping extra of something is lauded. Yes, right? That's what I was thinking. Other passages say if you have two coats, give one away. Give away your shirt too. Yes. Give away your shirt too if it is demanded of you. Don't build barns to store up your grain. Store up your grain. Your life may be demanded of you this very night, but here the instruction requires holding something back in reserve, just in case. But what? The answer reveals itself when we keep our focus on the bridegroom, on the coming of Jesus and the return of Christ. The question is not so much what the oil represents, but rather, what do we need to be ready to meet Jesus at any given moment? The oil of this parable may be different for me than it is for you, or for me. Yeah. The oil you need this Lent may be different next Lent. True. Start by focusing on the bridegroom's promised arrival, not the timing, but the fact of his certain return. Right focus equals holy wisdom. Looking to Jesus reveals what preparedness requires. Remembering who we serve shows us the substance of the oil needed to make our light shine brightest. The oil, whatever it may be for you right now, cannot be bought, sold, bartered, or exchanged because it is precious and priceless. The oil, even if you wish to do so, cannot be shared, but it can and will make an impact. The light of one lamp cannot be given to those lacking oil, but nevertheless, it illumines the room. So, some questions. What are you running low on right now in your life of faith, and can you replenish it? Big questions there, big question. What are you running low on right now in your life of faith? How can you replenish it? Question 2, do you relate more to the wise or foolish bridesmaids? When have you felt more like the wise bridesmaids, and why? That's a really good question. I don't necessarily know what to say in terms of an answer, but I think back on some of the other devotions that were in here. The one especially with money. I seem to have read that, thinking that this author is saying, oh yeah, God cares about what's in your checkbook, or rather what you're giving to the church. I struggle with that. I struggle to believe that. It's even more interesting because we had that devotion and I did that in the morning, and that night that was a conversation I was in, not because of the devotion, but just out of randomness or something. Someone's like, well, God doesn't care about what's in your checkbook. And I was like, yeah, right. And I said, but there, like the devotion, I was like, the devotion today said that he does, or said that God does. And isn't it interesting how this stuff works? The Spirit, right? Maybe that's the oil. It's like, oh, here's a little oil. Think about that. Maybe that's what it is. Oil is thinking about things, or keeping things, keeping things lit. In terms of our faith, as I often say, keeping our faith active. We don't just get a lamp and say, oh great, fill it with oil, and then put it on the shelf and just slowly use it. And before we know it, it's like, oh hey, I really need that. Wait, the oil is gone. Or let's keep this flashlight, and then we use it every once in a while, and then you go to use it when you need it, the power goes out and the batteries are dead. And again, that's not something we really think about, is it? Do we need to replace the batteries? Are we keeping up on the responsibility of the battery life in our flashlights for emergencies? Maybe that's a bad example. I don't know. Do you often think about Jesus' promised return? Yes. If you knew you would meet Jesus today, how would you prepare? I don't think you really can prepare. How do you be fully prepared to run into Jesus? Okay. You're walking down the street, or you're in Wegmans or Dollar Tree or wherever, and you run into Jesus. He's like, I'm Jesus. And you're like, this is Jesus. I mean, how do you prepare for that? What, you know, maybe that interaction will be the same like when someone runs into me that hasn't been in church for a while. Or they find out, when some people find out I'm a pastor, the first thing they say is, well, I haven't been to church in 3 years, but I really want to get back. I would want to think Jesus would react like I would. It's like, oh, well, okay, but, that doesn't define you, and I'm not keeping track. Uh, you know, I would think Jesus would care more about how we're doing overall. Oh, yeah, you're Jesus. Oh, yeah, you're Andrew. How are you doing? Tough stuff, right? COVID. How do we figure things out? How are you doing? How are your people doing? How's everyone doing? I mean, I imagine we'd be like, oh, we know he knows all this already. But, whatever. All right, some tangents here. If you listened to the sermon yesterday and you watched this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I really don't have anything in front of me. I'm just kind of throwing out ideas. And look at that, we're already at almost 12 minutes. So, what are we running low on in terms of our faith, and how do you think we can replenish it? What are you running low on? Who do you relate to in this story? I think that's really been the question for me these last 5 weeks, is just really relating to people in the story, in parables. Who do I connect with? Because that also goes with what the author said. Sometimes the oil we need for this Lent, oil quotes, for this Lent is going to be different than next Lent or last year's Lent, right? Here I am thinking, last year, Palm Sunday was the last Sunday before we came together in person. So it would be on the 17th, roughly. It will be 1 year since we have been in person for worship. And it still doesn't feel, forgive me, normal. We're around 40 people. Usually we should be around 60. But then it's this world and the way that we do things now, it's different than that. I can't look out and say, oh, there's only 40 people in worship, right? Because we've got 2 cameras going. We have we're streaming, and we have, roughly 10 to 15 people at some point that tune in there. And then we have all the people that watch the service. Of course, I'd like to think people that were in person are going and being like, you know what? I didn't catch everything. Let's listen to that sermon again. But also, it's different people. It's just that different way of thinking. So, again, sorry. So there's this new normal. But how are we dealing with that? And how are we being replenished in terms of our faith with how we now worship? Do you think about Jesus' return, and if you ran into him, how would you, if you knew you would meet Jesus today, how would you prepare? I probably want to go to lunch. If we made an appointment to do something, I'd want to go and get a really good lunch. Do you think I'd have to pay, though? I don't know. Let's close in prayer. Lord, distractions of every kind overwhelm us. Busyness, stress, fear, worry, comparing ourselves to others. When we try and quiet our minds, so much floods our consciousness that focusing on you and your will and your ways feels impossible. Send your Spirit to the Comforter to quell the noise within and without, so that we might know what oil we need to keep our lamps burning brightly with the light of Jesus Christ. Amen. Maybe he'd make us go Dutch. I don't know. So anyway, until tomorrow, we are, right in the next chapter of Matthew. I think, well, we'll see. So until then, God bless.